everybody, welcome back to another episode of Debunking DID. This episode is going to be about some of the words and phrases that are commonly associated with dissociative identity disorder. So if you've heard me using words in my videos or someone else's videos and you think, I've got no idea what they're talking about, hopefully this video should clear things up for you. If there's anything that we haven't included that you want to know what it means or what the definition is, then please do give us a little comment and we will make another one. So the first and most obvious word used in dissociative identity disorder is going to be alter. Some people also refer to alters as headmates. Alter stands for alternate state of consciousness. They are a part of the mind, a part of you, who has their own opinions, their own memories, their own religion, if they have one, their own gender, sex, their own sexual orientation. They'll have their own opinions on the world and on you and on everything around them. They may have physical differences. So, for example, some alters can be blind, deaf, have higher blood sugar than the body. Different medications might be needed for different physical issues and mental issues, so that when an alter switches out, that actually changes the body can become legally blind. As I've mentioned before in one of our All About Alters videos, there are studies that show that parts of the brain literally turn off in CAT scans, so they stop lighting up when another alter switches out. It physically changes the way your body works. So that's what an alter is. They are created in order to make sure that the alter who goes about daily life most often can continue to do that without memory of the horrific trauma that happened to them during childhood, which is necessary to form DID. Switching, or a switch, is when one alter is in the front seat, basically driving the body, and then they switch over. Someone else grabs the wheel and they swap seats. So now a different alter is control. It's like switching between two or more different personalities. That's what a switch is. If you're saying you're switching, you may be dissociating into a state where you're about to switch. The term out, when I say I'm out right now, that means I'm in control of the body, and that's what we call fronting. If you are out, then you are fronting. You're the one in control of the body, you're the one aware of what's going on around you, you're the one able to speak, you are out, as it were. A host. The host is the alter, or in some systems more than one alter, who is out the most often, the one who generally takes care of things like work and school and general day-to-day activities. That's the host. As I said, some systems can have more than one host. In our system, it's me, Chloe. I'm the host of our system. I'm out the most often. And the host almost always, but not exclusively, will have no memory of the trauma that happened during childhood, which is why alters are created, so that this host can perform daily activities as a normal person without being burdened, distracted, or driven to fall apart by the memory and knowledge of what's happening to them or what has happened to them. I get asked a lot about what co-con means. Co-conscious is what it stands for. That is when two people are in the driver's seat. So two people are out at once. Two alters are sharing the body. This can be when one alter has control of the body and one alter is right there in their head and is able to use the mouth. So for example, I might be saying something and someone else is co-con and their words will come out of my mouth, or they might be able to move certain parts of the body, or it can be literally almost exactly 50-50, where it's like having two people squished up into a driver's seat. So it's either like having two people, one sitting on the other one's lap driving a car, which is the body, or having one person in the front seat driving the car and one person in the passenger seat next to them who can easily tell them stuff, talk to them, can see through the front windscreen of the car into what the body's doing and the real world. But also if they want to take control of something, all they have to do is reach over and grab the wheel. Dissociating. We made a whole video on what dissociating is, what it means to be dissociated, and when that crosses over from normal dissociation, which everybody experiences, into a psychological issue. So if you want to know about dissociation, go watch our video, which is up there somewhere, and that should answer everything you need to know. Inner world. The inner world is a place where trauma is kept, generally. In most systems, it's where the alters live. It's not a place in the physical world, it's inside our head, a sort of subconscious or completely unconscious, really, mechanism to work through trauma and experiences and create spaces for the mind to connect again by having alters meet. So we're able to interact in the inner world. Everybody's inner world looks different. Some people have NPCs, non-playable characters, in their inner world. Some people have shops, their alters have jobs, blah, 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 blah. You can have anything in your inner world. I know people whose inner world consist of islands. They have different countries that have different parts of their system in and subsystems. I know alters that just have one house as their whole inner world, and others that have galaxies. Ours, we did a video on, we made it on The Sims and explained where different alters lives, what the representation is to us and why it's important, and that will be up there or up there. And yeah, it's different and unique for every single system. It's a place where the mind can process what's going on. There may usually be dungeons or things like that that contain trauma memories and memories of abuse or whatever trauma caused the dissociative identity disorder to be necessary. Trauma. Trauma is an event or an experience that is traumatic to an individual, something that the brain will have difficulty processing. It could be something that threatens physical or emotional harm, something that leaves a lasting impression on the psyche, and in terms of dissociative identity disorder, often something that results in the child, because dissociative identity disorder must be formed before the ages of 8. So trauma is something that makes the child feel as though they are about to die or unable to survive it, or induces a state of extreme shock and fear. So trauma doesn't just have to be abuse. Trauma can be, you can get trauma from all sorts of things. You may immediately think of war veterans. Yes, being close to death, being fired at, having no sense of certainty and always having to be on edge. That's trauma. Abuse is obviously trauma. Bullying can be a traumatic experience. The death of a loved one, natural disasters, all those things are trauma. Even though you may think, oh, my trauma isn't severe or something like that, I'm not a war veteran, that doesn't mean that your trauma is less valid. Your brain can't distinguish between saying, oh, I shouldn't let this bother me, someone else got shot in the leg. No, your brain thinks, my God, this is a traumatic experience, and reacts in the way that it's naturally designed to react. That means that you should be thinking about it in the same way. If it matters to you, if it is a trauma that has hurt you, then it is valid. It doesn't matter what anyone else's experiences are, because this is about you and your experiences, and it should be dealt with on that level. Structural dissociation. The theory of structural dissociation is something that we're going to make a big video about. If you go to almost any of our Debunking DID episodes, you will find an explanation. The structural dissociation theory is the most recent and accepted theory on how dissociative identity disorder is formed. It says that, unlike what most people may think, dissociative identity disorder is not a split. It's not one fully formed personality that is cracked in half like glass and split into two pieces. It's not that at all. That's not what this theory says. This theory, which has been backed up by science and various psychological and medical studies, suggests that when we are children, before the age of 8, we start off with very basic states of self. So as a baby, they may consist of, I'm hungry, I want love, I need to be fed, I need to go to the toilet. As we grow, different feelings develop. The child starts to learn new things. They start to have ideas about the world and about other people. They learn that they're real in their own experiences in their environment. They start to decide what they like and what they don't like, how they feel about certain sounds, smells, tastes, and this all forms together into one personality around the age of 8. Before that, they are still slightly separate states of opinions on things that are very one-dimensional. You know how babies can suddenly go from being crying, screaming, and then suddenly they're all really happy. They're very separate states still, until in normal development, those personality states integrate into one fully formed, separate and whole personality. With dissociative identity disorder, due to trauma, amnesic walls are put up between these personality states in order to prevent different parts of the mind remembering what happened or experiencing what happened. This means that when it comes to the age of around 8, when in normal development the personalities would integrate fully, they can't, because there are these amnesic walls that have been created by the trauma, which means that instead of having one fully developed personality that grows and matures throughout life, they now have multiple. And that's why alters are so different. They can be created and formed by the mind in order to deal with certain situations. And this is not situations like when I go to work I have a different personality. This is to do with trauma. If you want to know more about that, I would recommend having a look at our All About Alters series. There are 3 videos in there currently, and they will all help explain about that. That's why all alters are so different from each other, and they all have different opinions on things, because they grew up with the body, in most cases, with their own experiences and their own memories. And of course, that creates a whole different person. One alter might experience something that the host didn't, multiple things that the host didn't, and that will create a very different kind of person compared to the host. A little. You may hear people with DID referring to the term little. This is not a DDLG thing. I've had some comments about it saying, what is this? Little is a term in dissociative identity disorder systems that just generally means a young alter, an alter that's maybe younger than 10. So that's what we go for, is younger than 10, you're a little. So if you refer to the littles, then it would mean the younger alters in your system. It's got nothing to do with anything else. It's its complete own separate thing for DID. The DSM-V stands for the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. It is what every recognised and proven mental health disorder is put into, and it is abided by in, I think it's across Europe, and there's another one for America. I'm not sure about that, but I know that it is a very broad, wide-reaching thing that all companies and healthcare professionals in that area, which is a large area, I'm talking about countries, continents here, all have to abide by. So they define mental health disorders, and if it is a recognised and proven mental health disorder, it will be in the DSM. Also in there, with the different types of mental disorders that there are how they should be treated and the recommended treatments that go with that disorder. And these are followed by healthcare professionals, doctors, therapists, psychiatrists, you name it. It's all in the DSM. And for those of you who may think that dissociative identity disorder is fake, it's not. It's in the DSM. There are many studies, both medical, scientific, and psychological, that prove dissociative identity disorder. And I'm not just saying like, oh yeah, this makes sense. There are literal CAT scans, brain scans, proof that show differences in the brain, in physical changes, in levels of cholesterol, heart rate, blood pressure, sight, hearing, being able to walk. It can all change. It can all change. So that's what the DSM is. Fragments. Fragments are alters that have not been fully formed. They may have just a very small role or have been created to do one specific thing. That might be for some systems, maybe showering, and that's what they do. And of course they have their own opinions and everything like that, but they're less fully formed than alters are. Sometimes fragments exist just to hold a certain memory or a certain trauma experience. It really does change from system to system. You may hear people with dissociative identity disorder referring to multiplicity or referring to themselves as multiple. It basically just means that you have more than one personality, and that you have alters. You are multiple people living inside one body. And the term for that is multiplicity. A singlet or a singleton is a term that I don't like and we don't use, but some people in the community use as a branching term to refer to people who don't have DID because they have a single personality. That's it. That's all it is. Integration. Integration is a very big and complicated topic that has a lot of different opinions on it for whoever you ask. It is highly contested and a difficult subject for us to talk about. I find that it makes us dissociate heavily whenever we try to think about integration, but I will give you a short explanation now. There are two different types of integration. You can see me going a little bit. There are two different types of integration. The first kind is integration of memories. This is when all alters will when all alters will have access to trauma memories. They will remember everything that happened rather than having it split up between them, and all these memories of trauma will be integrated, connected into one memory of life. So there's no missing gaps, no, oh my goodness, what happened? So-and-so says this, so-and-so says that. It'd be like a normal person's memory in terms of trauma. And the other type of integration is integration of alters. And the other type of integration is integration of alters. Alters can sort of absorb each other, join together to become another alter, and in some cases of treatment, that is the goal. Most often nowadays it's not. Most often the goal of therapy is to get a system to work together cohesively and well enough to live a effectively normal life. But for some systems, their aim is integration, which is when all the alters are sort of combined into one to create that fully formed personality that everyone else has by removing the amnesic walls. And obviously, in order to do that, you need to share all the trauma, all the memories need to be re-experienced. You have to relive the experience in order to accept that memory into your memory. To split or splitting is generally referred to when a new alter is created. It's based on that old idea of the psyche or the mind splitting into more than one alter. Yes, alters can be made later on in life if another traumatic or difficult event that's extremely stressful comes up, because the mind has learnt that in order to manage, there are now 3 different mechanisms that it can use to stay safe. For normal people, that would be fight or flight. For people with dissociative identity disorder, it's fight, flight, dissociate. And if the situation is difficult enough, then that dissociation reaches a peak level and a new alter is formed. System. Now, a system is a group of alters. All the alters who live inside one body is their own system. A lot of people come up with names for their systems, so it's easier to refer to yourself as a collective. We didn't have a name for our system. We do now. It's the DissociaDID system. We originally came up with the name just for the YouTube channel, and then people began to know us as the DissociaDID system, so that's who we are now, I guess. A lot of people come up with these very complex and meaningful names that have multifaceted information and meaning to the system, and that's why they're called that. We're called the DissociaDID system because it's a play on dissociated and DID, DissociaDID. Is that as funny as I think? No, okay, no, that's fine, that's fine. Trigger. A trigger is something that causes a repressed memory or repressed feelings associated with a memory or a traumatic experience to come rushing through the dissociation into the front of someone's mind. It can make someone have a PTSD episode, a PTSD flashback, or can just result in a very, very uncomfortable, panicked feeling. A lot of the time it will result in a panic attack for some people, but what a trigger is basically something that reminds the brain and flicks a switch, and you think, whoa, and you get rushed with all these emotions. They can be physical feelings or just emotional feelings that are associated with the trauma. Sometimes triggers don't make sense. It's just what the brain has associated. So for some people, triggers can be very random. Sometimes there are things that do regularly trigger people and others that just don't seem to make any sense, but that doesn't make them any less valid. Right, well, I hope that answers all the questions you guys have. If there are any other terms that I haven't talked about or you need more in-depth information on, please do let us know. And I or one of our system members, one of our alters, will create a video answering you or just respond in the comments. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of DissociaDID's Debunking DID, and we will see you in the next video. Lots of love, everybody. Bye!